All right, welcome everybody. Today's Sunday, the February 23rd. Welcome to the Sunday call. If you're new to the service, I want to welcome you. The Sunday call is really a time where we look at the market outlook for the week ahead, as well as break down certain charts and outline our favorite setups going into the week ahead. So, before I start with the charts, let's take a look at the economic calendar for the week ahead, because we always want to frame our outlook for the market based on key economic events, right? So for this week, on Monday, we don't really have anything. On Tuesday, the notable economic event is at 10 a.m. It's a consumer confidence readout. And on Wednesday, we have new home sales at 10 a.m. and crude oil inventories at 10:30. Not really that important. On Thursday, we have pre-market a bunch of economic readouts. The GDP read and the unemployment claims are the ones to note there. And then on Friday is the important one, which is the core PCE index pre-market at 8:30 a.m. Eastern. That's a key economic metric that the Fed pays attention to as a read for inflation. So, that could be a market mover as we head into March. And there is an FOMC meeting on March 19th, I believe. So that's the one to look out for. Coming back to sort of the market, I just made a video about, the breakdown on SPX on Friday, right? Had a big down day, sold off pretty much more than 100 points, exactly 100 from open, and was almost at minus, close to a minus 2% day, which is pretty large for SPX. So if you look at the breakdown video, I kind of break it down through various nuances, as well as looking at the intraday chart. So I won't really dive into that right now, except to say that, Friday was a big sort of down day for the market. For now, the best trade is to the downside, right? So, and the key level that everybody's watching here is the 6,000 level, right? So we're pretty much, we closed very close to that, right? I wouldn't be surprised to see that get taken out during the overnight session today. If futures gap down, but if not, if we have a small gap up or a small gap down, this is really the level to pay attention to for the downside, right? Because under 6,000, which is a key psychological level, I think you can see a pretty quick move down to 59.60 and then the 59.20, right? If there's real participation or continuation from the sellers. Big picture again, we haven't really moved too much. We've just been in a range, but the market, once it breaks this range, should make a pretty good move. Whether it's to the upside or downside, remains to be seen. But from Friday's action, it seems that we should be positioning ourselves, at least for the short term, on the downside. And I do think under 6,000, you'll have a lot of good downside plays setting up. So as usual, we'll take it week by week. For this week going in, the bias is leaning to the downside. If we see SPX get back through 60.50 at the very minimum, I would say I would start to look at which stocks are acting the strongest and then focus on calls on those. But for now, going into this week with a very open mind, but also focused more on the downside, right? Because SPX has now failed sort of the 20-day moving average, which is this envelope, and then it closed right near this purple line, which is a 50-day moving average. So if it can sort of close under the 50-day, that's by definition breaking trend, right, to the upside. So for this week, watch that 6,000. I think if we get real selling, we should test 59.20 to 5900. And if this is the start of a bigger pullback, I do expect the market to test these lows perhaps like around here. So would say around 5,800, 5,774, 5,826. Again, no one has a crystal ball. No one knows the future, but would not be surprised for those lows to get tested again. On the upside, I would honestly not really bother too much until a reclaim of 6,100, but I think over 60.50 or 60.70, you can start to take a look on the upside again on the names that are acting strong, but not really interested yet. QQQ, the tech index, pretty similar story. Closed under the 20-day moving average, a little bit over the 50, slight relative strength to the SPX. But here, I think under this area, like 520 to 522, you can test 510 it within the next day or two, and then 500 is the key level to hold here. Again, on a broad market sell-off, I definitely expect 500 to get retested and possibly all the way down to 483. And on the upside, this 540 area proved to be pretty hard, so I would just wait for that personally. IWM, small caps, this just did not, get any legs, failed at the 230. We took a shot at calls, didn't work out, and now it's sort of really rolling over. Under 217 can test 213. Both of those levels can work for puts. Under 217, you can play it down to 213. Under 213, you can play it down to 210 or, 205 area. Don't really like trading it that much. I would rather focus on SPX 6000 and QQQ 520 personally, but just to cover the four indices, I'm showing it to you right now. Dow Jones, interesting chart. Again, not something we really trade, but this is an index that is currently, other than, IWM is the weakest, but from the main three indices, the Dow, the QQQ, and the SPX, this one's the weakest right now, right? It has a pretty convincing close under the 50-day here. And, oftentimes in the past, the Dow has led sell-off. So very important to pay attention to this, even if you don't trade it per se. I would, under this 434, definitely expect this to test around 425 and then 418 area. So, and on the upside, 450 is the level for the breakout. So would wait for that to play that setup. But looks pretty weak. And then finally for the indices, also look at Bitcoin, right? And Bitcoin's also similar to the overall market, has gone pretty much nowhere after that move from 74K all the way to 108 in the last few months. I do think if the market sells off and Bitcoin's also weak, this breakdown setup under 90K is a good one. I think we can possibly test 86, 81, and back to 74, back test that previous all-time high. I do think it's a good setup, and for that, I would look to play. We're in MSTR. We kind of played it. We're in coin. I would look to play those names, but if you want a direct sort of comparison to exactly how Bitcoin moves, IBIT is the ETF. They have options on that now. So with IBIT, I would look to play puts under 53 as an early entry, or you could wait till 51 or so. But I think underneath that, you can really test this 46.7 and then fill that gap to 44 or so. So IBIT is definitely on the watch for me this week if Bitcoin breaks down. Looking into individual names now, starting off with sort of mega cap tech, Amazon, along with every other most other stocks on Friday, had a pretty big down day. It's now back near this high from November, around the 215, 216 area. I think puts can work under here for a move to 207 or 208, and then if things get really hairy, then up to 200. So Amazon's on watch around this 215, 216 area for puts. Microsoft, interesting one. 2 weeks ago, I was really looking to play the downside on this, and it again, and the reason was, this level, this 408 to 405 zone is a very big level here. It has found buyers every time, and the last time was no exception. It kind of quickly moved to move down from the open this day from 408 to 404, but found buyers. And then last week it had some bullish news about a quantum computing chip that led to this really strong day. And I personally played some calls on this. I know some of you guys caught it as well. I played the 415 breakout. Didn't fill my whole order, so I didn't put it in an actual order, but I did mention in commentary. But that was a nice sort of 50% move in a short time. But it completely failed right on Friday. So it's back again to this infamous 408 area. Personally, because this area is so tough, I am this time going to wait for 404 to get taken out, which was this last low. I do think under 404 it should test 400, and then underneath should sell off pretty quickly. I think if the market's weak, this can retest 385 again. So I will be watching this closely again this week for the downside, because when I see positive news get completely negated really quickly, that's a good sign that the stock is probably going to go lower, and you have the market behind you. Netflix is another name that has been super strong, obviously, no doubt, but is on watch personally for me under 1,000, especially 1,000 to 995 area. So it closed right under the 20-day moving average, but I obviously will let the market dictate. I think if SPX can break 6,000 and Netflix is under 1,000, I think that's an interesting put play. It can when it moves, right? So it can put in a 50-point down week for sure. So this is on watch for me for puts. I'd wait for a convincing sort of a little bit of confirmation under 1,000, perhaps under 995 as an entry there, but we'll let you guys know. Tesla failed at the 362 I was mentioning for many days. Very, very key level to reclaim. It tried to poke above on, I think, Tuesday or Wednesday it was, could not close over, and then roll back lower. Under 325 can work for puts for a move to 309 and 300. For calls, I would wait for 362 personally. BABA, insane trade, right? I did a breakdown last week on Sunday, so you can look at that. But even after that, it moved almost 20 points last week with 15-20 points, gapped up on earnings. And look at Friday, right? If this isn't relative strength, nothing is, right? Market had a almost 2% down day, and BABA was up 6%. So clearly, a lot of money flowing into that. It to me almost looks like money is coming out of American big tech into BABA now. So we'll see. Ideally, it's super extended here personally for me. Like, I'm not going to buy calls here, but what I am looking for is some sideways action, perhaps. I do have shares. I have shares on BABA. I have shares on BABX, which is the levered ETF. I'm holding, I've trimmed some. I'm still holding some. So I have some exposure there. But for calls, your entries need to be a lot more precise to make money. So you have to be careful, right? Don't FOMO in, especially if this is your first trade or your second trade for BABA. We've caught this from the 80s, and then again at 100, then again near 120. So this is almost our fourth or fifth sort of trade on BABA if we were to take it. But what I would look for is some sort of sideways action, right? In the next week, maybe even 2 weeks, personally. Like, let it base, let these moving averages catch up, get some steam, and then try for a breakout play towards 150 plus. but super strong name right now. Futu is another super strong name. This 131 level is kind of interesting. Also a little bit extended, but maybe not as much as BABA. I am watching this 131 this week for a quick trade. Not something I would size super aggressively on because sometimes I don't really not a big fan of the price action on Futu, but technically, technicals wise, it's an interesting play. And then the other China name I like is JD. I didn't set levels on this, but this 43 area, 42 to 43 area is an interesting level here. It had a stronger day, but then wicked off a little bit to close the day on Friday. But overall looks pretty good, right? I think if this can get through this area, it can test 45, then that high from October at 48, and then eventually 50. So within China, I kind of like this chart quite a bit. Moving on to some other names. Snow won't really spend too much time on this because they had earnings on Wednesday. Let's see how it moves on earnings. I think if it gaps up past 194 near 200, might be worth a shot for calls afterwards. If it gaps down, don't bother. Out of play for now. Overall, it's been strong this year, so that's why it's still sort of on the watch list, but more of a true watch and not play right now for me, at least up until after earnings, but we'll see how it goes. Moving on to the chip names, NVIDIA is another name that reports earnings. Obviously, the market will care about this one, right? And for NVIDIA, it's at 135-ish, right? Like I would, either way, I'm waiting for after earnings. I think if we get a big gap up through 150, might be worth a shot for calls. Because it, that 150 level has been 150, 152 has been very hard. If it gaps down, obviously that's not going to help the market. It should help other downside plays. But personally, under 130 can work again for puts, but not before earnings. But if it gaps down quite a bit on earnings to under 120, it can sell off to 113, which was the low here, and then 100 even if things get hairy in March. So I would be open-minded on this name. Obviously a very, very important stock. It's still one of the market leaders. It's been slow the last 6 months, but we need to see this sort of big consolidation resolve one way or the other, right? So wait and watch for this. SMCI, they're supposed to come out with their 8K this week. We'll see if that's true. I mean, it obviously had a really strong run, right? From 25 to 66 the last 2 weeks. We caught quite a bit of this, so that was a good trade. Now it's sort of been last 3 days basing, right? Which is natural after a very strong move. I'd personally wait till after the news comes out. But if it's positive, if the 8K looks good, I think it goes back to 66 and possibly 72. So we'll wait for that news. But and then MSTR, we are in the 270 puts, but very simple on this now. It's been basing, and I covered MSTR in detail in the trade recap video from earlier today, but under 300 here, right? It closed under 300. Under 300 should test 283, and then around 250 even if Bitcoin can sell off. So, I think under 283, you can roll up to the 250 puts from the 270s. We'll see where MSTR opens tomorrow. If there's a gap up, I would just stay in you should just stay in the 270 put runners rather than roll out further ahead. But we'll let you guys know what we do, obviously, after tomorrow opens. But looks like it's starting to roll over and break down, obviously under all key moving averages now. NOW is a name we mentioned a couple weeks ago and last week as well, right? I just highlighted, we missed the play, but highlighted as like I kept mentioning for 3 weeks in a row that NOW was the one of the good plays on the downside once it failed 1,000. So it ended up being a pretty nice play, right? It back tested that 1,000 on Wednesday and just rolled over, sold 60 points. It can test 900 to 850 even if the market's very weak, but obviously the ideal entry was 1,000. If it can base for a couple days here sideways, maybe later in the week sets up for puts if the market's still weak. This area, this level here at 1950-ish is kind of important. But we'll wait and watch for that. Lulu, I kind of like this setup on the downside for under 354. It had a pretty weak day on the previous Friday, not this past Friday, but it has filled this earnings gap. So will it sort of bounce back from here? Possible if the market's strong again, but overall it's been weak, right? The last 2-3 weeks. So I'm watching this for downside once it takes out 354 and definitely under 350. You can wait for that too. Costco. So Costco had a really epic run, right? We caught pretty much all of it, but then since testing near 1080, it's sold off the last week. Made a kind of hammer candle on Friday, which is definitely a sign of relative strength. But despite that, I would watch that 1025 level to the downside for a move to 1007, which was the previous 1008, which was the previous all-time high, and then 1000. I think if the market, sells off pretty hard, names like, big names like Costco, Netflix, these are the names that, you can really catch good percentage plays on with options, right? So I would watch that level carefully. For calls, I would wait for, wait till the end of the week, I would say. And if it can get back through 1050 area, it has a shot for calls again. But primarily, I'm going to be focusing on the downside for most names, as I said, at least coming into the week. And then, obviously happy to be told otherwise by the market as always. But Eli Lilly, we played this on Friday. Obviously, caught a pretty good move from 880 all the way to 893. But obviously, with the market weakness, it sold off. I would wait again for 890, 893 area. Overall, looks kind of bullish, right? Relative strength. It's possible if it can get back near 890, it should go to 900 and then 940. So not a name I want to be longing on Monday morning or anything, but just to keep an eye on as an upside play. Related is VKTX. Usually we never play names that are on the bottom right of the chart. This is just a speculative idea for you guys, but so VKTX is also in the obesity space, right? It is a $4 billion company versus Lilly is almost pretty much $1 trillion company almost. But VKTX has an oral and sub-Q drug for obesity as well that's been showing pretty good results so far in clinical trials. So there's been speculation for pretty much over, I would say, a year about a possible buyout, right? But the problem is whenever there's speculation of a buyout, speculators such as ourselves buy up the stock, right? And it gets very high. So when that happens, the actual buyer, right, these big pharma companies can't buy it because it's too high. Like the valuations are not justified for them to make that purchase of the company, so they don't do that. So over time, then all of the people that bought due to speculation eventually get bored or give up, or just move on to something else, right? So it's done nothing for the last year almost, right? And then it sort of in the last few months has really sold off. But now it's come back down from 100 to 33. So getting to a point where it's an interesting entry again for a speculative, possible buyout later in the year. I wouldn't even bother with options on this. If you like that idea, if you think that's interesting, I would buy shares. If you buy it at 34, maybe have a stop loss. You can have a stop loss here at the recent lows at 28.5, or you could have a stop loss at these, they are around 25, let's say. So your downside is either, 7 points or 9 points, right? And I do think if this can get actually bought out, this is probably minimum. I mean, I would think it gets bought out somewhere between 50 to 70. So you can catch a pretty good upside on this. 9 points, let's say, downside, and like 20 points upside for sure. So 2 to 1 there. But just a speculative idea for you guys. A few other names actually on the upside that are interesting. Names that have completely bucked the trend, and these are all in the XLP bucket. So these are the consumer staples. Like, this is a sector of the market that really had a really strong day, right, on Friday, completely against the market. So that's kind of notable. And so if you go into the components, you have names like Philip Morris that made new all-time highs on Friday despite the market weakness. So I'm watching PM. Haven't really traded it maybe ever, but maybe once, I forget, a while ago. But I let stocks tell me when to get involved. So PM is on the watch list this week. I think if it can get through this high of 154.7, it has a shot to get to 156 and then 162 in the coming weeks. So this is on watch. Another name that's on watch within the XLP is Coca-Cola. Again, a name we almost pretty much never play, but extreme relative strength, right? Which is really the theme of our trading. As you guys know, we like to trade stocks that are at the top right of the screen, making new highs. So KO is on the watch on the upside. I think if it can hold the 71 area, it can test 73, the highs over there. Again, these are names that are very slow moving. We don't really trade them very much, but when you don't have a ton of good upside plays, you have to focus on the ones that are actually showing strength, and sometimes they're high flyers and sometimes they're not. So again, we let the market dictate what we do, right? Another name I think I saw earlier was MO, in the same bucket. I would say not as clean as sort of PM, but also on watch. They're kind of in the same sector. But yeah, so those are the names we're going to be watching coming into this week. Hopefully that's useful to you guys. And yeah, take a look at the trade breakdown video I posted earlier as well, going over the SPX breakdown and MSTR trade we took. But other than that, I'll see you guys bright and early tomorrow. Have a good rest of your Sunday. Bye.